Hello, I'm Heather Granato with Vitafoods, and thrilled to have you here for our topic of addressing financing challenges for women-owned businesses. Excited to bring this to you from Women in Nutraceuticals, our new organization dedicated to improving the number of women in the C-suite, women in science, and financing issues for women in this industry. And delighted that this session will be managed and run by my colleague, Mike Dovbish from Nutrition Capital Network. And Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Heather. So we're just going to get started here and have our first panelist introduce himself. We have Thomas Hafner.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Thomas Hafner. I've been asked to sit on here as an investor in both consumer health, agtech, and biotech, and to look at this issue from an investor's perspective. And speak about my experience with raising funds and the kind of funds I'm encountering, and how I could see that it is an issue for women to raise money. I have no data for that as a man, but I do like my psychology, so I have some theories on why that's happening, and maybe we can talk about that as we go down the line.
Great. And Thomas, can you mention the name of your firm that you're with?
Okay, so our investment vehicle is Zaluvida Ventures. Like I said, we have investments in agtech, helping cows to excrete less methane. We have investments in consumer health, which include consumer health products, which actually include Steffi's company over there, Analyze and Realize. And we also have some biotech ventures which focus on antimicrobial resistance.
Great, thank you. And next we're going to pass it over to Jan.
Hi, I'm Jan Mills. I'm the CEO and founder of Artemis International, and I am here because I'm the one who chose not to use venture financing and to talk about alternatives that you might have. And when I speak and give a little bit more of an overview, which I think we'll do, I'm going to speak directly to those of you who are starting businesses.
Great, thank you. And we'll move on to Dean.
Oh, he doesn't need it.
Hi, my name is Dean Mosca, and I've been an entrepreneur for a few decades, but more recently have mentored a few different companies. Very recently, a woman-owned company who I helped obtain significant funding from a strategic partner, and I'm involved in investing in various types of company within the nutraceutical and specialty food space.
Thank you. And lastly, we have Lorna. Lorna has to take an earlier flight, so she's going to be with us for another 15, 20 minutes.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lorna Vanderhaeghe, and in Canada, I'm a women's natural health expert, and I've been researching and writing on nutritional medicine for about 40 years now. And I built a women's company, and very much as such, I also bootstrapped my business, so I did not take any venture funding, and then I sold the business. So I went through the acquisition process, and I'm also here to help people who are starting their businesses.
Great, excellent. So why don't we continue on with you, Lorna, and if you could just talk a little bit about what you're seeing right now, if you're working with any women-owned companies right now, and what's the current environment right now for women-owned companies raising capital?
Well, I think it's difficult for women to raise capital, and Bloomberg did a big report on this where they have actually found that it's gone down. In 2020, of all the funding that was given out by joint venture companies that were funding women businesses, only 2.6% of the funding was going to women-led businesses. And that was out of 28% of the applications that were provided to women, from women in that space. And I think a lot of it is that women actually don't often know where they can go and seek funding. I think that's part of it. There's also a fear of maybe losing part of their businesses. I know for myself that I did not want to give away part of my business for any amount of money, and that I wanted to do it myself and maintain ownership. I think there's a lot of factors involved in why women are not seeking funding, possibly, and why they're not being turned down. One of those may be that simply when you go to funding organizations, there are so few women sitting on the investment boards that women are not getting the money. It's going to male-led businesses. I mean, ultimately, you've got to have a great business with a good business plan, and it's got to be a good business to invest in, whether it's a man or a woman who's running the business. But I think we've got to change things.
Yeah. You would think it would have gone up with what we're hearing in the news. So for those that don't know, Nutrition Capital Network is a platform for founders and investors in the health and nutrition space. And so we track all the companies that have come through, that have applied. We've actually seen a pretty good percentage of women-owned businesses that have gotten funded, that have come through NCN. How do you think this industry compares? Is it a little bit better than, let's say, tech or biotech?
I think there are a lot more women going into business, young women starting their businesses out of their garages, and women starting out in the business helping other companies, and then like myself decided that maybe they should create their own business through it. So I think in our industry we have a lot of really focused, motivated entrepreneurs, whether they're men or women. And so I think it's probably why we see more women-led businesses in the health industry versus tech, which is very predominantly a male-dominated business.
Very true. Dean, do you want to speak a little bit to this? I know that you've also been helping companies right now raise money.
Yeah, I mean, on the macro level, the numbers are horrendous, really, in terms of what you see happening with respect to the percentage of women-led companies getting funded. For me, it all ultimately comes down to more of the micro side of things in terms of, the actual business model, the business plan, the management team. Again, women or men, it always comes down to the management team in terms of their ability to execute their experience in the space and again, their business model in general. And then, again, having recently helped a 100% woman-owned company get a significant strategic partner and a significant investment, our first go-around, they actually turned her down. And we kind of repositioned the strategic plan somewhat to better fit with something that would work with them. And as a result of that, we ended up being successful in getting her a partner, again, a strategic partner that is definitely going to take her business to much higher level, because they already have the infrastructure in place from a distribution standpoint as well as manufacturing to make that happen. So again, the numbers to me are atrocious, but in a lot of cases, in my own personal perception, with some of the programs that are out there, I see women-led and women certified as being women-owned companies actually do have some opportunities to get, I won't call it special circumstances, but they do have programs where people are looking for helping women-owned businesses. Clearly, there needs to be more of that happening, and ultimately, it comes down to I think getting good mentorship, whether it's from a man or a woman, doesn't matter. Ideally, I love to see more women mentoring women, because they can, clearly, I admire the way women think. So for me, it's like, the perspective is brilliant in a lot of cases. And for women to be on the same, if you will, perspective in terms of helping one another, having been through it, I think, is going to be part of the answer.
Got it. Thomas, and I want to bring this back to you and your work that you're doing right now for your next fund. And if you could talk a little bit about how that's going and sort of how that relates to what Dean and Lorna.
Sure. First of all, I'd like to react to what I've heard. And the thing that disturbs me a little, not what you've said, but the notion of we need to have support programs to help women as if it was a group of people that needed support. I think we need to change the paradigm. We need to change the attitude towards towards investing from investors, and hold them to task that they invest in good businesses, no matter what kind of gender is leading that. And that requires us to be more choiceful who we take money from, and make it difficult for those funds who don't comply with these or don't live up to these standards to get good deals. And we're setting up a one-stop growth platform, which acts as a fund, an incubator, and an accelerator for self-care companies, very early-stage startups. And for us, diversity, inclusion, and we also added emotional safety in our DNA, and we're going to make that, we're going to live that. It's not just something to put on the website, and we're going to hold funders that want to come on board, whether they're industry partners or whether they're financial partners, to task that they actually subscribe to our values in that regard. Now, I want to just, I said earlier about psychology. When you and I spoke a week ago, I've been thinking about this. Women are different. Women won't sell themselves out as easily as men. Women won't fake it till make it as easily as men. And strong women with strong business plans do interfere with the demons of weak men. And unfortunately, we have a lot of people out there, organizations, funds that are led by money-driven weak men. And that is how I hypothesize that why women are struggling, good women with good businesses may be struggling to get good money. But having recently, and I've always bootstrapped as well. I've always only ever bootstrapped, but I'm now involved in 2 businesses where that's just no longer possible. So I've just recently raised nearly $50 million for an ag tech business from mainly US investors. I didn't find one fund in there that I could possibly imagine would discriminate to who is leading this. They invest in strong leaders, principle-driven people. And women, again, are probably more principle-driven than men. Yeah, I don't want to generalize it totally, but so I think it may be shifting already. Certainly the kind of funds that we're talking to, I couldn't imagine that. But so again, it's a matter of changing, crowding this notion that women find it harder, or that it's harder for women to find money, crowding those guys that participate in that cycle, crowding them out.
Yeah, I want to hit on something or dive a little bit more into selling themselves up, because I think that's a really important point to discuss. And Jan, I want to get your feedback on that, but I want to make sure we hear from Lorna before she has to leave. So let's start with Lorna. If you could talk a little bit about that, selling yourself up, the experience in your businesses, both of them, what you're seeing out there now. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think that, if you've got a great product and you're really passionate about your product and you've created a great business plan and it's working for you, it's easy to sell yourself up. It isn't a difficult process. I think that as women, we tend to not be raised to brag about what we've done, to, tell the world how great we are and how great of a business person we are. It's just not the way that we're brought up. So I think that we have to, that's going to take a long time to change. For myself, I've created 2 businesses and sold them. The second one I did exceptionally well. I sold early and worked through that business with them. And I realized after I sold it that I was probably a better business person than the person who bought my business, but I didn't know that until I'd gone through the process. So, understanding that for women especially, we've just got to know that we're really good at what we do, or people wouldn't want to buy our businesses or invest in our businesses or help us grow our businesses. So, starting out and knowing that you've got what it takes to make it happen. And then we have to do better business plans so that when we go to a group looking for funding, that we can really, explain our business as well.
Clarify something?
Yeah, sorry, Thomas, you wanted to clarify.
I just want to clarify, when I said selling yourself out, it wasn't about your unwillingness to sell part of the company. It was about selling your soul to the wrong kind of people, just for the money. Yeah?
Well, that's the other thing is that when I sold my business, and we talked about this a week ago, I hired a company out of California, and they went out to 200 shortlisted groups to acquire the business, and 80 people shortlisted and signed NDAs, and then we had 8 people bidding. And through that process, they were pitching me to buy my business. And I had one meeting that was quite interesting because the group were all male who were trying to buy the business. They actually wanted my e-list more so than even the business because it was so valuable. But I was there with my GM, who was a male. And the group never asked me a single question, even though it was my company and I owned it. They asked the GM because he was male, and he kept saying, it's her business, and you want to buy her business, and she knows the answer to the question. But they still kept asking him, and at the end of the discussion, they got up and said, I guess we're not buying this business. It was so comical that you just saw the bias was amazing. So,
Jan, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah,
because you've not raised money.
But
You've not raised money, so you haven't gone through some of this process, but I'm sure this touches on some things that has happened to you in your career.
Well, the incident that she just described, I mean, those kinds of incidents just happened to me today at this show, where people want to talk to the person in charge, and you have to say, you're looking at her. But,
Yeah.
So that happens. That still happens. What I wanted to do is address the aspect of people thinking that because we don't go out and get venture capital or whatever, that you're selling yourself out. I think we have to emphasize that it's actually a positive thing because we are principled and there are things that we want to accomplish. So when you think about venture capital and getting investment, most of us know that we're going to jump on some kind of a treadmill, and it's going to be fast and hard, and the whole thing is to grow and to get bigger and to do it in the next venture, and that's what these guys want you to do, and there's nothing wrong with it. That's appropriate. But that may not be what we want, and that's why I said I wanted to address women who are starting businesses now. I want you to stop and think, and there's a couple things I want you to think about. If you take venture money, and you may need to, because we all, there's a point where we all got to figure out how to pay the bills, right? But if you can avoid doing that, at least for a time, you may well be better off, and you may be a little bit happier and have the kind of business you want. So most of us, we start businesses, we're passionate about something. We want something to happen. We're type A, we're gambling, we know it. We're going crazy. And we think we need to raise money, but if you just stop for a minute and think, why did I start this business? Now for me, I started it because like you, I loved my product. I really believe in the power of fruit to affect health. I trust my products, I stand by them, I love them. But I also had a very strong motivation to create a business because I believe that businesses have a profound effect on societal change. And if I could make my business a model for societal change, that was also equally important to me. And had I sold part of my company or all of my company or whatever and had some kind of investment, I think that many of these investors will say they have that value, but they don't always, or at least it's secondary. And it should be. Again, there's nothing wrong with that, but that may not be what you want, or in my case, what I wanted. And so I wanted to achieve a few things, but it also gave me financial benefits because now I own 100% of my company, and it's grown, and it has tremendous difference in valuation from the time that I would have had to get seed capital. And I could take those values that I wanted to instill in a business, and instead of now, later, because you actually need more money as you grow. So just realize that. You think the money you need is now, it's actually when you grow. That's the harder money, and that's the more money that you need. But now, I can look and I can say to a potential investor, look what I've created. It's not just a societal concept. This is a proof of concept. This kind of value works. It made this company successful. So that's one advantage that you have in the negotiating process. The other thing, of course, is that you have more flexibility. You have more equity that you can share with your family, with your employees, and then with, again, the future investors. So don't jump so quick to that alternative. There are, and we can talk about that later, other ways that as a startup, there are other sources of financing that I think women miss that may be more important at this stage than venture financing. And just for right now, I'll shut up for a minute.
No, we want to hear more. So you did not get venture financing, but it sounds like the wheels are already turning about if you were to bring on an investor, it'd be more of like a private equity investor. So you could potentially be thinking about that, and are you doing anything right now to potentially set you up for that? Or are you just running your business, and and if you go down that path, you go down that path?
Well, the beauty about business is that it changes, and it has different life, very much like a person. You have different life phases. Okay, so what I'm saying is that I think the initial seed capital is sometimes driven out of fear and desperation. To be honest, you need the money. You're trying to make payroll. When you get to the stage that we're at, we're thinking about how we're a little bit more cautious. We're a little bit more in control. We know what we're about. We know what we're good at, and we're saying, how do we want to grow? And so the possibility for equity investment is there, for strategic investment from our suppliers. All of that is possible. So it's a phase of life, I think, a phase of life in the business.
Yeah. Good. Well, I'm going to bring this back to, let's start with Dean. So both of you, Dean and Thomas, mentioned how much you love women-owned businesses. So what are some of the specifics that you see that are they run differently? Can you make I mean, we don't love stereotypes, but do you see any themes?
Well, I think Thomas mentioned the principle centered. I think is definitely something you see more of.
What did you?
Principle centered.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Now I can.
For sure, and I think just within general and talking about any particular business issue with any woman, they often bring a different perspective to the potential solution or how to solve a problem that I've just always admired in terms of. I didn't see it that way, and it's actually a great solution as far as a different way to approach, something. So, I think that, and definitely to your point about ego, I think ego is definitely a much different level with men versus women. Ego-centered kind of thing. You often with men you can clearly tell when they're very ego-centered. Not that there aren't any women who are like that, but for the most part I don't see that. And again, what impresses me the most with respect to looking at a potential investment in a business or mentoring a woman in a business is just their whole holistic sense of how to run the business, what the numbers are. They have a really good handle on the numbers, and they know their business inside and out. And they could literally just walk on, if they're a production facility involved in the business, they could walk out on the floor and work beside anybody on the production line to get the product made. So just much more grounded and real and I think that would probably encompass most of the different core themes that I see.
Yeah. Thomas,
I agree with that. Hi.
You agree?
Well, there's not much I can add to what you said. All our businesses thrive on our human capital. And if we're going to attract great people, we need great values, we need a great culture, and we need, increasingly, people are looking for belonging and emotional safety and identification with what you do. And in my experience, all of our companies, save if you take me out of the equation as a founder, are all led by women because they are better at doing that. And they're better at creating that and driving for that. And that doesn't mean that the men are doing bad things. There can be a nice yin and yang there. But yeah, just building on what you're saying, I think that women add a dimension to a business that an all male-led business is less likely to have. Let's put it this way. I want to take everything away from men. I mean, I'm a man myself, so yeah.
And I wonder if there will be a time when there are more women-led businesses that get financed, that the male-owned businesses, it might start equaling out, having those types of characteristics as a business, because they might, as you start to see women-led businesses and the success that they're having, maybe you start to see a balancing there, because they're seeing that there's something that women are doing that maybe men are not doing.
I don't have the data to hand, but I think there's already quite good data out there to show that those types of businesses are performing better on a number of metrics, whether it's retention, whether it's attractiveness, whether it's, and in the end, it may not immediately be visible, but in the end, it translates into financial performance. And that's with more and more data of that coming to the fore. Like I said earlier, we need to work with people who recognize that and not with those that don't. Yeah.
Lorna,
starve them off deals.
One of the things that is in the data is that women-led companies are more profitable. So if you are looking to fund a company and you're funding a women-led company, you're going to make more money. Because the bottom line is there's this attention to detail that you get in a women-led company. And women-led companies also hire more female executives. And so their entire company is more rounded. And if I was a man listening to this talk, I would hire a lot more female executives. My board would be full of women, especially if I was selling nutritional supplements or health products, because 80% of the shoppers are women. So you would really like to have the majority of your key employees females, because they're the ones who are doing the shopping in the first place. So we do know that they're more profitable. That is what the data states.
That's a good thing in the eyes of an investor. Yeah.
And it just strikes me that, you've just said that the types of companies are that women start and they lead successfully. These should be the companies that investors look at. And you guys are doing something about that, and you're doing something about that. But the numbers are still atrocious. So why are the numbers still atrocious when women-owned companies are the types of companies that investors should be successful with? I don't know what the answer to that is.
I'm wondering if it has to do a little bit of there's not this. There's more of a realistic approach maybe to valuation and forecast for women-led businesses, and so maybe doesn't get the excitement of VCs because they want to see more of a hockey stick.
Right.
So they want to see that, yet so many of those companies, they fail to even come close to that, and then at some point there could be layoffs and all these other things. So maybe that's part of it.
Well, and again, if people in venture capital, they need to see the hockey stick. That's their model. That's how they make money. Okay, but is it really necessary to grow fast and get out and do the next thing, or is it better to create something? And that I think women are more willing to create something profound. That's my observation. I sometimes I've gone to these investor forums many times, both as an investor and as thinking about what we might want to do. And I listen to these presentations, and they're all about, we're going to do a deal, and we've got the greatest science, and you think, they're never going to implement anything. So I see it. I don't see women doing that, with the notable exception of Elizabeth Holmes, but okay.
Yeah, Dean, what do you think about that?
I mean, I think you bring up a good point, is that because, again, on average, I think women are more conservative in terms of realistic in their planning. And so therefore, they're not going to show the big hockey stick or whatever and be much more realistic with what they think they can achieve. Because again, they maybe have a little bit more belief and faith in their brand, being again, more less egocentric and more realistic and wanting to convey more of their truth as to what they think really is going to happen. And so is that less exciting than the guy who stands up and does a dance and says, oh yeah, we're going to be $2 billion. I mean, clearly there's also that part of the thing that investors look at and just roll their eyes and just can't wait for the guy to get off the stage. But I think there is definitely going to be a gap, I think, of maybe trying to excite the investor a little bit more, who's looking for those metrics. And I think the point you raised is maybe they need to stop looking at those metrics as a 3-year exit. I'm out with a sex multiple based on it's going to go 10x in revenue, versus this person is building something real and it's going to create a lot of value. And yes, I'm going to get a return, but maybe it's a 5 or 6 year exit.
And I just want to add, I mean, we review all the applications, or I'm part of the team that reviews. So are you, Dean, for Nutrition Capital Network. And some of the businesses, I have to say, from women-owned businesses, the growth rates, we ask, what's your expected sales for 2022, 23, 24, and they can be quite conservative. And so sometimes the initial feedback from us is, well, they don't look to scale that fast, so let's not accept them. But what we learned was, let's give them a call. Let's talk to them and see what's going on. And what we found is that they needed some education and some information, and that they were able to sort of adjust things. And they were very honest about it. They thought, you said, well, we just want to be, we don't want to overestimate. And so there needs to be, I think, a happy medium there, because we don't want them to be saying they're going to do 10, 50, 100 million. But if they are applying to an event where there's a lot of VCs, they should be mentored to sort of fit that approach a little bit. So, but there's a lot of mentoring that I think could be really helpful.
I'll go. So when I went to sell my business, I hired this company, and I had no idea. I was that woman who really, I thought I was going to get $12 million for my company, and it was very tiny. I had $3 million in sales with $1 million in EBITDA, and I thought this was very tiny. And I wanted to sell to another company so they could help me grow my business into this big behemoth that was my dream. And then when I sat with the financiers and they said, do you have any idea the trajectory of this company? It is growing at like 2,000%, and your valuation is huge. And I had no idea. So I think that basically it's that education of what does the growth look like? What is the hockey stick? What kind of valuation is that going to get you? I didn't know what that was. In the end, I got $40 million. And I thought I was going to get 12. So I think it's education and not really understanding. It's unless you've gone into finance, this is not. I was about building products and helping women. I wasn't about understanding the hockey stick. And I really thought I sold to private equity, and they were going to build it again, but then they went public, so that ended. So I didn't get to do the next round, which would have been really exciting.
Yeah. Jan, did you have a comment on that?
Well, I kind of wanted to turn it back to what I said about early financing, which puts you in a position for the more venture, the bigger money, you know. And from my standpoint, there are 4 things that I'd like to pass on how you get money alternatives to going out and getting investors. And number 1 for us is you got to get bankable. And you think that's easy, but it's not. And what we did is we were trying to go to the big banks, right? You know, and found that we couldn't get loans, we couldn't get the capital that we needed, and it took me through the network that I had developed, and I cannot emphasize enough the importance of the network. But to hire a former head of one of the big banks in our community. And he coached us to getting the type of banking relationship that we needed with a smaller local bank. And that was a turning point. It doesn't sound like much, but that was a huge turning point, because then we could get the line of credit that we need. We could get the things that we needed, which are, by the way, we're a supplier to the industry. That the dynamics of the financing is a little bit different for supplying than for consumer brands. And I think we all know that. So that was one thing. The second thing is to, again, build your network. There are angels everywhere. And I don't mean angel investors. I mean angels. And
True angels.
And they're everywhere. And so one of the angels for us was one of our key suppliers. And this was a guy who had started his business. He knew what it was like to be an entrepreneur. And so we came to him. He did things like, because we were buying in Europe, and he let us purchase in dollars. So just not have, at the stage that we were at, not having to deal with currency shifts and currency hedging was huge for us at that point. And then he gave us long terms because we had things on the water for a long time. When you're starting a business, cash flow is everything. So if you can find the kinds of angels, and they may be your suppliers, who can help you with that. And then the third thing is just don't be afraid to ask. And this is why I wanted to get this in here now, because it goes back to the question, why don't women get financed? And I think it's because we don't ask, and we need to ask. And so at one point in my company, we wanted to do kind of a side project that we wanted to fund outside of our normal profit and loss. And I started talking to venture capital, and one of them said, why don't you just talk to somebody that served on the state chamber with me? Which is, talk about it, the Indiana State Chamber is a good old boys network, let me tell you. So, and it just never occurred to me to ask for $100,000, $200,000 loan, which by God, I would have sold my house, my dog, and my kids if I had not paid that guy back. Luckily, we were able to do that easily. But somebody had to kind of kick me and say, ask. And then the third thing is again, from the supplier standpoint, the other thing that we learned, you heard about guerrilla marketing. That may be important to consumer businesses, but for us, what was important was guerrilla research. And that was get my product into the hands of every single researcher I could possibly get, and something that I didn't have to pay for would come back to me, and it does. So, again, just getting back to why don't women, ask. Angels are everywhere. They want to help you. Believe me, ask.
And so should women be looking for women mentors, or does that matter if it's a male or female mentor?
Well, I mean, at my age, there were no female mentors, so they had to be male mentors. Yeah, I mean,
But nowadays, so
yeah,
is
and
it...
and to one of the points that you made earlier, that you'd like to see women mentoring women. I do have to put in a plug for WIN, because that's one of our goals to do. So all of you out there, join this organization. We fully plan to mentor. We fully plan to put you in a position where you're not afraid to ask, and you're going to get the exposure that you need. This is the goal of our organization. So I do have to give that little plug. Heather, you would have kicked me if I didn't say this.
Can you, because Heather just briefly mentioned it, so what is WIN and what's the goal of WIN?
WIN is an organization that's newly founded. We're just starting it. We just launched really this show. Our website is up. But the goal of the goal of the organization is tangible. It is. We want to increase the number of women in C-suites. We want to increase the number of women on boards. We want to increase the investment dollars going to women-owned businesses. And with our counterparts in research, because again, this organization is central to the supply side of our industry. We want to see more women in charge of research projects, because our female compatriots in research are often experiencing the same kind of discrimination that we experience. So we want to see those women get funded as well, and we want to see them running heads of research organizations within their university or their private institution. So those are the tangible goals. But to do that, like you said, we need to be talking to women and giving and helping them. We need to give them that hand up. We need to kick them every now and then. I had to be kicked a few times. I'm sure you had to be kicked a few times. We want to kick them into ask, talk, don't be afraid, and to teach hard skills. How do you make the presentation? Who do you talk to? Those are, anyway, I'm going to stop.
And I imagine getting this organization going, all it's going to do also is be out there for women that are soon to be entrepreneurs. So now they have another reason to become an entrepreneur. They see that there's organizations and mentorship available to them. So I imagine it could be a wheel that starts really kicking things off.
We hope so. That is our hope.
I want to go back to Dean. So Dean, these businesses, these women-led owned businesses, they do well, higher retention, profitable. Should you just go into a pitch and just put up some of these data points, and when you're working with a company to help them get funding? Would that help? Is that too generic? Is that too trivial? Like what?
Do you mean in terms of if a woman's pitching to an investment community?
Yeah.
Should they be putting up some of those figures? I mean, look, at the end of the day, again, on the micro level, it's always going to come down to the people. And the way the individual, male or female, the way they communicate, the way they handle themselves, the way they, inspire, the way they lead, that all comes out in a presentation. And that's always going to be key. And so no data is ever going to fix that, right? But I think, again, how the woman speaking, how I did this to get to here is much more relevant as far as to the profitability, or when they're going to get the profitability, or how they're going to get the profitability, as far as key things. But the one thing I just wanted to hit on what Jan said is, so getting financing doesn't just mean going out and asking people to invest money and giving up equity. Supply and the whole trade financing is another issue that's way too often overlooked. Not only going to your suppliers and telling, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm working on, can I get 60 days, can I get 90 days, whatever the case may be, I do 30 on this, 60, and then 90. Also your customers. You say, if you pay early, can you pay early? Can I give you a 2% discount, which is expensive money when you analyze it, but 2% on a 40% margin, and if you bring in 200 grand today versus having to go to the bank and get 200 grand for 30, 60, 90 days, that's the kind of financing that you really need, because it's the month-to-month, day-to-day operation, paying payroll and paying your suppliers and waiting for money from customers. That's where the bulk of the money is really needed. And so there is a big opportunity there that often people don't even know about. They just don't even think about, well, I can't ask my supplier, he's going to think that I won't be able to pay him. Or I can't ask my customer because they're going to wonder what's wrong with you, right? And no, you know what, at the end of the day, you just present your case and say, this would be really helpful. Is it something that's possible? Especially when the supplier's flush with cash, or the customer's doing well, that it's not a big deal. To them, a 2% discount is huge. And they're looking at, it's 24% annually, right? And you're looking at a much different perspective as to how much that would be helpful for you to get that cash right away.
So it's asking for help just across the board and all that you're doing. Just you want to encourage that for women-owned businesses. Is that correct? Just
Yeah, and the other one I want to add is I was mentoring a female company that didn't end up working out, but a classic case of not wanting to ask. The first thing I said to her was, have you raised any money from, your love money, like your family, your brothers, sisters? Because I knew from talking to her that her brother did really well or whatever. She says, no, I haven't asked for anything, and I won't. I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I have a hard time believing that you believe in your business if you won't even ask your brother or whatever for some money to get that going. So that to me actually shows lack of belief in I'll die, like you said, to pay them back. Like, it's just not an issue from a standpoint of morally, I'll have to do whatever I have to do. But that comes from believing in what you're doing. And if you don't believe in what you're doing, you're like, okay, great, you want to play at running your own business, but if you don't really believe in what you're doing, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So we have representation from North America, Canada, U.S., Canada, Europe. Are you seeing is there any difference you see from, let's say, North America and Europe and how investors interact with women?
I honestly don't know. I really don't know how it is. I mean, Europe compared to America is a desert when it comes to venture capital. And I really don't know whether there is how women are faring here. As a European, my gut feeling is, as Europeans themselves are more conservative anyway in terms of presenting their business plans and European attitude towards what in America we call performers, financial plans with a hockey stick, as we talked earlier, tend to be more. People tend to think more. People are going to scrutinize that. People are going to tie me down to those numbers. Whereas, in North America, it's a tapestry of your mind, how you see your business evolving. No one believes those figures are going to come true in the time you say they're going to come true, but they want to see how your business evolves, which is a fundamental difference to how we present these kind of things in Europe. So, and it is true. That's what I was going to come to that. I'm the only European here. We have 3 North Americans here, although I, as a European, raise money in America because they do buy into that dream. They do buy much easier into those things. And I just want to address your question earlier. With all that data available that women-led companies are more profitable and better retention and all that kind of a thing, I would caution to pull that one because it weakens your business case. If your business case doesn't support investment, to pull that card, hey, I'm a woman and women traditionally do that, that's not a strong thing to go. The other thing about asking, absolutely. I have built all my businesses from bootstrapping. I've asked suppliers exactly, you flush your cash, I have great technologies, let's team up. How can we make it work for both of us? Do you want to buy my trademark, or do you want to have a first right of refusal on my pipeline for the next 7 years, or something like that? And I have raised tons of money that way, and it served us all well, as long as we all wanted to go in the same direction. So that's absolutely important. But when it comes to venture funding, don't ask. You're offering an opportunity to participate in your business. Yeah? If you're going out asking for money, you're already in a different position. You're just setting this up that you are asking for support. You're not asking for support. You have a great business, and you're offering an opportunity for a fund to participate in your business. And that's the kind of confidence that it's hard to muster, but that switch is crucial in the dynamic in those pitches. That when you speak to those folks, I have a great deal. Yes, I'm looking for money, but if you don't buy into that, I don't need your money. There'll be someone else who's going to buy into that. Yeah, because if my deal's hard, if my deal's good, I'm going to get that money. If you can't get that money, then something's wrong. Pitching it right, or the deal is not right, or you're not at the right stage. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think mentoring. I think will also be helpful for founders when they are talking to different types of VCs. I mean, there's so many different types of investment opportunities and funds out there, but they each are a little bit different, and each want to hear something a little bit different. And what I've seen, and there's one company I've gotten to know, and it's a woman-led business, and she is saying, this is exactly what I want, from investors. Even, I want to make an introduction to an investor group. She's very upfront about, I want to see this type of investor. This is the type of company I am. And there's part of me that thinks, ooh, should you maybe dial that back a little bit? But then there's another part of me that thinks maybe that's good. It's very authentic, and then that specific investor hopefully will be drawn to that type of company. So I want to actually go back to that. So where is that sort of fine line? Because I think it's an important point. It goes to a founder saying, I'm going to rule the world, and I'm going to get to $1 billion, and investors wanting to hear that. But if the company is truly not going to do that, but it's going to be a good business, how do they sort of, I don't want to say play that game, but it is a little bit of playing that game.
Well, that's where, and I don't want to plug my business here. We're launching in a couple of months. But that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to find these early stage founders, male or female, doesn't matter. And we're going to equip them with a team from day one that has everything from legal, finance, IP, technology development, pitch decks, you name it. Equip them with some pre-seed capital and make them fit for external investment. And here we can make a tailor-make approach and marry them up with the right kind of investors. So we're going to take them to the stage where they are venture backable, if that's what they want, and then carefully select from a list of LPs that we have in our network, and pitch those deals to those that will match the ambitions of those founders, and create it. And we do that right from the beginning. We'll sit down with those founders once they've passed our diligence, that what you want to achieve with your business, what you want to do, how can we help, how can we take your business to where you want it to be, and then marry it up with the right people. And that comes to network, experience, all these things. This is what we want to bring to founders. Yes, we want a slice of your business in return, but we're going to make this fly for you. Yeah, but it's this tailor-made approach and having access to founder or to funding sources that appreciate what you're trying to do, that appreciate you as a person, that appreciate your ambitions, your goals, and that's crucial. And we need. It's hard to find those people from the internet. It's hard to find how they tick. That can only come from recommendations. So either it's a firm like you or like ours, and maybe one day we do something together, or it's through networks, as you say, asking people, I'm that kind of a person. Do you know investors that would go for that kind of thing? No point pitching to somebody that sees you as a fish unable to climb a tree. Yeah, there are, for every type of business, every type of ambitions, there are investors out there that will support that. Yeah. I just recently, we're just closing a Series A round, a $25 million round for our AgTech business. And I was talking to some really AAA American investment funds. And, they ask the typical questions, and how much is the runway, and how confident are you in these figures, and so on and so forth. But we are very ideologically driven. We're trying to make an impact on climate. We're trying to make an impact on reducing antibiotic resistance. And that drives us much more than how much money is going to be left at the end, because we know it's a lot. We just want to talk about it so much. And then all of a sudden we got a call from a family office that had done research into this space and said, hey, we heard what you guys stand for, what kind of business you're in, but also what drives you. And we've seen some videos about you. Where do we wire the money? And literally in one phone call, they offered $10 million as a lead investor. One phone call. And so I'm saying, you've got to believe there's someone out there that will love you. Yeah. In this case, for the business. Yeah.
Good feedback. So why don't we start here? Heather, are we asked for questions, or? So why don't we sort of round out the discussion and just go start with you, Jan. Well, you've had your time. Did you want to say a few extra words, and we'll just go down to the end and then maybe take a few questions? Okay. Jan. Okay. Jan, do you have a few parting words?
Just go for it. No, but I really like what you said about the ask, because I did emphasize the ask, and I believe in that. But he's right. There's a time to ask, and there's a time to make a value proposition, and don't undersell yourself, but don't oversell yourself either. And remember that you have something they want. Just at the beginning of the conversation, they were talking about women sometimes undersell yourself, or they no, I don't think that. And I think you agree too. I don't think that because I decided not to go out and get venture capital, I was underselling myself. I was thinking I was making the exact right decision for the morals and the goals that I had. So don't let people twist things on you because you're a woman. All right.
Yeah, no, I think there were a couple of key things that were discussed today that kind of my mind of like, yeah, that's actually a good point. So, I mean, again, earlier with respect to finding financing from different venues other than just the traditional methods that you see out there. Raising money is a lot of hard work, and to Thomas's point, you have to find the right people to talk to that are into your space and that are interested in what that marketplace and because there's investors just say, yeah, I'm interested in tech, I'm interested in whatever, because that's what they're interested in. So I mean, you have to talk to the right audience. And it's a grind. Forget about whether it's women or men. I mean, I've been on the other side many times trying to raise money, and it's not fun. And it's a lot of work, and you sometimes feel like nobody's getting this. And then you find the right angel, right? And then things just turn. So it's never going to be easy, but I think there were a lot of good points raised as far as, again, not asking, but actually presenting an opportunity, versus like, oh, could you help me out here? Versus being very confident in what you're doing and what you believe in, and saying, here's an opportunity to participate in this particular opportunity as far as your return on investment down the road. So, anyways,
good advice.
I think that you've got to find a financial partner that is going to love what you're doing as much as you do, and that's going to be there to support you. Because I truly think that's the key, and I think the mentoring is so important. And I had an amazing mentor. Her name was Claire Farr, and she built a business in a market, an allergy-free market. She was the first person. So she was an amazing woman who I could call at any time of the day, who was there to support me, who told me all of her failures and not to do them. Your job is to listen to them and take their knowledge and grow your business the way that you want to. So I think finding a partner that is really excited about your business, who isn't just interested in the money that you're making in your business, it's going to be a lot more fun of a ride. It won't be a grind, and you'll be able to build a really great business that you wanted to build with some help, which I think is nice, because although I bootstrapped it like you did, that's a lot of work and a lot of scary days when you're wondering who you're going to pay. And I utilized my manufacturer. They were a great partner. They built their business at the same time I did. I also didn't listen to the naysayers. When I started the business, I told retailers, I can't afford to put you on terms. I need a credit card. And we started the business and said everyone had to pay credit card. And they said, everyone told me, your business is going to fail. Nobody is going to want to pay credit card. Everyone paid credit card. That was the only way it was going to happen. So, really trust yourself. Know that what you have is valuable, and find a great financial partner. Every business I've invested in, I have loved. I don't invest in businesses that I don't love.
Well, that's a great way to end our panel. So I wanted to thank you all. And are we taking any questions? Do we take questions? Does anyone have any questions?
If someone has a question, Isabella has a question.
Izzy spoke earlier today, and very nice to see you at our session.
Yes, very nice to see you. I usually see you in the U.S., so
yes.
It's the first time seeing you internationally. Well, that was such a great panel. We talked about lack of education amongst women for how to make financial projections, and I was just wondering maybe if there were any theories as to why. Less women studying business or something deeper than that?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Less willing to lean in with figures that they can only hope and pray they will make. I know a lot of women that, and men, but that kind of have some doubts about themselves, like almost like an imposter syndrome. So that may prevent them from putting out those financial projections that investors like to see. Yeah.
I hear that. I hear the term imposter syndrome quite frequently from women executives. They just are like, friends of mine that just, men too, right.
I think there's enough women coming out of business school that could do this. But that said, one of the best pieces of advice I can give is get a good CFO and one that knows how to deal with cash flow. Cash flow is the king, and that's different than the normal way that you've been taught to look at financing sheets. So absolutely, we narrowly averted some serious mistakes that I would have made had I not hired a good CFO.
One of the things I want to say is that when I put those numbers on the page with the finance people, they were big numbers. And then when I sold, I had to hit those numbers. So I think there's always this, you might want to tone it down a little bit so that you're going to hit the numbers. Go for it, because then your bonuses are bigger and, the profit is better, and it becomes a really exciting ride. But those are big numbers often that get put on the page that then you have to live with because you agreed to them, especially if you're selling a portion of your business.
I think the other thing that I would want to add to everything that's already been said about that particular question is that whether it's finance, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, there's a lot of free help with people that you know. Just don't be afraid to ask. So somebody who is a CFO, right? Especially in the younger days where you couldn't afford to pay for a tenth of their time. Is to literally say, here, I put this together. Can you give me your thoughts on it? Same with your marketing plan. Same with your business plan, where you can, again, mentoring takes a lot of forms and can come from a lot of people. It's not just one person. And even if you are well versed in financials in terms of accounting as well as projections, you still really need help with people that have told the story before to people as to how to tell a story, because that's really what it gets down to, is a believable story that somebody can potentially invest in. And again, that whole mentorship idea can't be stressed enough, that you can get mentors involved literally every day from every area of expertise to help you along the way. And so again, back to don't be afraid to ask.
And in this call it post-COVID world, where a lot of things work differently these days, there's an amazing amount of really great guys. You said to get yourself a good CFO, available on platforms like Upwork, where you can get fractional access to some really seasoned experts who are willing to be at your side for a day, a month, for a year, or for life, or whatever, at really good rates. And that's an amazing place to get that kind of mentorship. Yeah, I mean, and in the platform we're setting up, we are trying to do exactly that. We're trying to get a curated list of heavily vetted deals to a curated list of investors, so that we can marry them up and do that. Yeah. So, but yeah, to answer your question, get help and marry up being confident without going over the top.
Good. I think we have one more.
I think we can do one quick question over here. We've started 2 minutes late, so I'm going to give 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for this session. My name is Funke, and we produce herbal teas in Nigeria. I've always been quite afraid of angel investors because of some of the experiences I've seen, not directly with us, but some of our colleagues that have actually had to partner with angel investors, and they've sort of maybe taken them out of their businesses. Are there guidelines to prevent such thing happening to you when maybe you partner up with an investor and you are still kept in your business. You are not actually sent out of the business because maybe they know the business would yield more money and somehow they get you out. What are the things to watch out for when you are discussing? Thank you.
So I'll let the panel answer that, but you mentioned a good CFO and probably a good lawyer, right?
I was going to say, get good contracts. And, know when to hire a lawyer and to spend the money on that good contract. And if you're taking money from family and friends, you need an even better contract. So I think it's very important to know when to hire a lawyer and always have very good contracts.
I think the one thing I want to add that kind of goes back to what I was saying about women's special strengths is intuition, and listen to your intuition because you'll know that person as to who they could potentially be from you'll get that vibe very quickly as to whether or not they have good intentions with helping you with respect to your business versus wanting to do so. That's not an angel investor. That's the opposite.